Hey everybody, I'm just going to run through my sheets, kind of explain what everything is. Realize that sometimes I don't explain it well enough. So if you're new here or if you have been here a while but I've never explained it, I'm just going to go through what everything on the sheet means, give you a better idea of what you're looking at so it'll be more useful for you. This is what I call the main sheet. It's called the Sorare NBA tracker, but I always refer to it as the main sheet. Basically, you're going to have a bunch of tabs along the bottom here. I'm going to explain what those are. First one is daily projections. This is going to be the next daily game. So any players that are appearing in that particular daily game will have projections. All other players who are not appearing in that daily game don't have any minutes and thus don't have any projections. Basically just tells you the player, their team, who they're playing. Average points is their average Sorare points per game based on the time frame that we're using. And the time frame we're using is rolling. And what that means is I'm starting right now February 8th, so the day after the trade deadline through the end of the playoffs. When we get our first games of the current season, I will take one day off, so then it'll be February 9th through the first day of the regular season and so forth. This way we always have fairly current information to work with. So we've got average points per game during that stretch. We have average minutes during that stretch. We have our standard deviations here, basically looking at all those scores in that range, finding the average and then how far away from the average that this player's score normally falls. The reason we use this is to figure out which players are capable of more when they get more minutes, which players are more aggressive when they're on the floor more. A higher standard deviation number is going to lead to a higher ceiling number down the road. So those are kind of the players you want. You want a player that's going to be really good or really bad. We're always looking at the ceiling outcomes for players just because we want to try to get the highest possible score. So high standard deviations are really important, at least for non-star players. The next column is average Sorare points per minute. So we're estimating minutes, so the Sorare points per minute becomes very important. This varies between, I would say, like 0.7 and 1.8. So you got Wemby around 1.8, and you have some guys, here's like Miles McBride, fairly regular player, 0.75 points per minute. This will give you a pretty good indicator of what level of player you have. We have projected minutes, and our projected minutes, obviously for this daily, are just for Tuesday's game. If a player doesn't play on Tuesday, they don't have a projection. Next category is defensive factor. So what I've done here is I have a team defense tab at the bottom. We figured out league averages. We figured out Sorare points. I wrote a formula for that. And then each team has a difference between their Sorare points allowed and the league average points allowed. And we use those differences to find our factors. So Atlanta will be a 5% bonus for any player playing against Atlanta because they're not a good defensive team. Boston, on the other hand, right underneath them, pretty good defensive team. When a player plays Boston, we'll take 5% off of their projection. And these numbers will stay static. We're going to use the same numbers for the first month of the season. This is based on last year. Once we get a month into the season, I will use updating live stats from this season so we have accurate adaptations as to how teams are performing this season. Obviously, team context changes in the offseason, players moving around. These aren't going to be the same this year as they were last year. So we'll only use these for the first month, and then we'll switch over to live updating everyday stats. Column J is a baseline projection, and the baseline projection is basically taking the points per minute times the projected minutes, and then also multiplying it by the defensive factor. So it's giving you that baseline projection. Column K is the current L10 score for each player, and then you'll see a floor and a ceiling. So basically the floor and the ceiling are working off this baseline projection, and they're taking into account the standard deviation. So they're subtracting the standard deviation from the projection, and they're adding it to the projection. So we're getting a normal range of outcomes for each player. So for example, Peyton Pritchard, 18.55 would be his baseline projection here for this daily. His floor is 3.5 points. That would be bad. His ceiling, 33.5 points. So that would be very good. And so then we have our last metric, which is how we find values. And that is the ceiling projection minus that L10 score. So 33.5 minus the 10. The 23.85 is going to be his ceiling minus his L10 score. So we do that for every player, and we're going to come up with who your best values are going into the game week or going into this daily. Current game week tab works the same way, except you have more games to work with. The only thing that's different here, a max projection. So as I said before, we're always looking for the top score. Josh Giddey plays once, or his top projection for that week is just whatever that one game would be, as opposed to Pritchard, who plays twice. He projects at 18.55 against the Knicks, but up to 21.65 against Washington. So we're going to take that Washington projection. We're looking for the best possible outcome. So just like with the first sheet, we're finding the baseline projection. These formulas will multiply that baseline projection by the team defense metric. And so it'll come up with a projection based on who they're playing. And then the higher of the two, or higher of the three, or however many games the player has in a game week, will go in that max projection. That's what we're looking at. And so for the current game week, Pritchard's going to have a higher max projection than he would for the daily, because the first day he plays the Knicks, who are a good defense, and on Thursday he plays Washington. That's a bad defense. So this number is going to be a little higher. Ceiling is going to be a little higher. Floor is going to be a little higher, just because of that Washington matchup. And again, we can order these greatest to least. You can find value. Pritchard just happens to be near the top in both the daily for Tuesday and in the whole game week projection. But as you can see, almost every player here has a projection. This is for game week 1. We do have rookies, and we do have guys that didn't play in the second half of the season last year. And if they did not, they don't have a projection for game week 1 until we get something to work with. So I've done a little write-up on those guys. If you want to take a look at it, put a new tab out today, game week updates, and there are some write-ups about some players that don't actually have projections. And then the last thing you see here is the value radar. Now the value radar shows how a player's L10 is changing day to day. So once we get into the season, this will make more sense, but this is how you identify who the buys are going to be before the rest of the Sorare market does. Basically, if you see a big negative number here, it means that player's L10 is going to go down. That's when you want to buy, because they'll be useful in the next coming game week. And I'll talk about this as we go, so you'll be able to see who's a good buy and who isn't. But you'll also be able to order these for yourself. You want to take a look at who the top plays are most likely going to be going into the next game week. Best to identify them a couple days ahead of time, because it'll give you a chance to beat everybody to the market. All right, so we went over the team defense tab. The schedule tab, you don't have to do anything with this. Just tells you the upcoming games. I just use that for my formulas. Player list, really don't have to do anything with this. Just for reference, trying to make sure I have all the rookies in here, get all the names to match up correctly. We'll deal with that again once we start the season. This is my game logs tab, and the game logs tab will show you every player in the league, dating back to that February 8th date. All their game logs, and again, here's the L10 change. That's my value metric. I just moved it over so you can see it easily. But you can see how things change from day to day. Big tab, lots of information here to look at. If you want to see how someone's done over the course of a bunch of games, you can come look up their Sorare points here. And next is my minutes tab. You don't have to do anything with this either. This is just imported from RotoWire. I'm just using RotoWire to help me estimate minutes. Basically, they do estimates on a lot of things. So if you ever want to see exactly how they're projecting any player, you can certainly come here and take a look. I'm trying to space them day to day, just leaving some space in between. So this first group here is Tuesday, then we have Wednesday, and then if we get all the way through Wednesday, we'll have Thursday's game underneath those. Thursday's games, rather. The sheet 21 is just basically something helpful for me. I import stuff and then I move it around, so that's nothing. And then daily minutes, basically just the minutes for the upcoming daily. So this is for Tuesday. All right, let's check out the gallery organizer. All right, the gallery organizer has an instructions page. This is basically just where I'm pulling information in. I'm importing information from one sheet to the next. If you ever see a hashtag ref here in A1 says you need access for something, just let me know. I'll get you access. It shouldn't be a problem though. I've given you all access when I made your organizers. And then we have a daily tab. Now this is just pulling that top end ceiling projection from my main sheet into here. And of course, like with the main sheet, only the players who are playing are going to be populating in the daily sheet. Anyone else will not have a projection. Then if we go to the current game week tab, then you'll see projections for everybody who's on a team. And I haven't updated mine, so I'm still using the initial projections I put up last week. And so obviously some of these guys who are either not going to play or projections have changed are a little out of order. So I want to put those back in order. I click that little box in the upper left to select everything. I go to data, sort range, advanced. And then again, if you have multiple scarcities, you're going to want to sort by column A first. So I usually do Z to A. I only have limited, so it doesn't really matter for me, but if you have other scarcities, you can do it that way. And then you want column I. Column I is your value metric, and I just play underdog, so I'm always looking for value. If you want to sort by top end projection, figure out who your MVP should be, you can sort by column E. So column I, Z to A, or column E, Z to A, whichever you want. Just make sure you have everything selected, and then it'll put your top plays at the top so you can start to make your lineups. And this player list tab is basically just something I use to make sure I can populate my sheet correctly when I add new players. And find those values and start making your lineups. In this used tab, I can make these for you if you don't have them. I know I was adding these to the most recent gallery organizers, but some of the older ones probably may still have my baseball choices. But anyway, this will give you a way to organize as you're building different underdog lineups, different contenders, different champ lineups, now that we have multi-entry. What else can I go over for you? Just let me know if you have questions. I always feel like I'm explaining things, and like I said, I know I don't explain them well enough, so please let me know if you have questions. I don't want anybody left in the dark. I want you to know what to look at when you're trying to figure out who to buy, who to put in your lineups. Usually it's this value metric. You're going to try to get as much value as you can in every lineup. Obviously with MVPs, you want to look at that top end projection, figure out who your MVP should be, and then just build around that. Some basic strategy stuff. What I'm doing is, with the common cards, I'm basically just playing dailies with those. You're going to get more common cards, so I'm going to just play common hoops every day. I'm going to try to win some essence that way, and then the next day, I'm going to drop players, I'm going to pick up more. I know you lose points when you drop players. I don't care. I think there will be some days when I can't make a lineup because I won't have enough points. But I want to be competitive in as many of these as I can, and I feel like doing these will be a better opportunity than doing regular game weeks of common. And once you get enough cards, you might be able to do both. You can see I've got a pretty strong one for game week 1. I really like Gobert as a value play. Davis and Edwards going to be two of the top scorers. I got Brunson fit in there, and they all fit with Dalton Knecht, who I think is going to play a role off the bench for the Lakers, probably get about 20 minutes, and he's a 0. So this one just fit. I believe it's exactly 120 points, and that's with Knecht being a 0. So hopefully it's good news for me. I'll let you know how I do. And then, yeah, if you're on a small budget and you just want to play for a little, play for rewards, for fun, just play classic underdog. That's what we're good at here. Finding value, figuring out who to throw in a small cap lineup, 75 caps, you're averaging 15 points per player. That's where the real strategy comes in. The contenders at 120, you're going to need some stars to compete in those. So if you don't want to spend $100 getting yourself a Jokic or a Luka, there are other ways to go, but generally you need some stars if you want to be competitive in those. And the prices will come down as the season goes on. So don't rush to spend your money. We're going to find some things that are worth spending money on over the course of the season. Things you'll be able to flip, things you'll be able to flip or play. Buy multiples of guys now and then decide to flip them. You can do that. You can play them all if you can't flip them. So a lot of good stuff going on. Thank you all for signing up. It's been kind of a whirlwind the last couple of days, getting everybody their organizers, getting everything set up. But I think we're almost there. We're almost to the start of this thing. And then hopefully we can get a couple of you on the podiums right away as we get into it here. First couple weeks are always probably the hardest to predict, because we don't know what the rotations are going to look like with all these new guys on different teams and rookies coming in. Once we get all that figured out, I think we're going to get rolling. Looking forward to a great season. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know if I can do anything for you.